Welcome to Unlearn the Crap TV with your host, Kathy Baldwin. Unlearn the Crap TV is more than just a show. It's a movement towards breaking free from the disempowering structures designed to benefit the few at the expense of the many. It's about education, healing, and unlearning the detrimental beliefs that have been ingrained in society for generations. So now, please welcome the host of Unlearn the Crap TV, Kathy Baldwin.
Welcome to today's episode of Unlearn the Crap, where today we're going to talk about trauma. So if this is a trigger for you, please be aware. Also know that we're going to be talking about some very adult things in today's show. So be conscious of who's in the room and how they are perceiving or receiving this information. But I believe that there is not a human being alive that has not suffered trauma. We think of trauma as big things, earthquakes, murder, death, or hostage situations. I mean, we see about these traumas that happen on the news, that happens with school shootings and all sorts of different things that are happening out in the world. But our brains perceive things as trauma, even if it's something that we're not able to comprehend, or if we don't understand it. And so there are so many traumas that affect us on a regular basis that becomes part of the crap we need to unlearn. But then there's also those traumas that we should never, ever have to live with. And these are traumas I'm talking about are childhood traumas, abuse, physical, emotional, sexual. I'm talking about losing the safety of the people around you that are supposed to make you feel like everything is okay, that the world around you is safe. And unfortunately, when children, because they are so self-centered, they're discovering who they are, their world revolves around them. They believe they are the center of the universe, and they are for themselves. So when they're trying to make sense of things that should never have to be made sense of, like these abuses, our brains go to, it's our fault. There's something wrong with us. We don't belong. And we create these narratives that become the foundation of how our brains work and how we show up in the world. And it affects every aspect of our lives. It affects our self-esteem, how we show up in the world, how we process our thoughts. It shows up in our relationships, in our parenting, the way we deal with anything and everything in our world. And yet, because of that, because children believe that there is something wrong with them, they live under the cloak of shame, of blame. And they hide because they don't want anyone to know that there's something wrong with them, that they're damaged. And so just like Debbie Ford explained when she wrote the book about the dark side and accepting all sides of ourselves, she talked about how when we try to suppress, it is like holding a beach ball underwater. We can only hold that for so long with so much intention and so much focus. Eventually, it will pop up. And when it pops up, we don't know where it's going to go. We don't know who it's going to hit. And we don't know who's going to get hurt. But it is time that we stopped the suppression. It is time that we looked at children and understood that unintentional traumas that are inflicted on our children because of unhealed wounds by ourselves is one thing. And we need to do our own healing journey. But the traumas that are put on our children by abuse, sexual, physical, emotional. These are things that need to be talked about openly so that we can heal individually and as a society. Today, I'm so excited that I have the author of Resilient Wives. Let me move my fingers, Danielle Sebastian. Danielle, would you please come and join me in this conversation? Hello,
Thank you
Danielle.
so much. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much
for.
for having me.
Oh, I am so thrilled and honored. I have had my own traumas, my own abuses. I've been in relationships where all of these different abuses have been dealt with or hidden and carried through. And I know the effects that this damage of all these different abuses can do. And it is very, very difficult for the person who is suffering the abuse to go through their own healing journey. But I can say that it's also hard to love somebody who's going through their own journey, their own traumas. And that's what this book is about, isn't it?
It is. I think that sometimes the partners of childhood trauma survivors are sometimes this unseen, victim of childhood abuse, to be honest. And there just isn't a lot of resources for spouses and partners of trauma survivors on how to create connection with people who are terrified of it.
Yeah. Because that is one of the things that happens to trauma survivors is they don't know how to trust. They don't know how to communicate and have intimacy. And yet, when you are in love with somebody who has suffered this and you don't know their backstory, you have these clashes that are happening. Could you please give us the backstory as much as you feel comfortable sharing?
Absolutely. So I got married to my dream guy 14 years ago, and we brought a stepdaughter into our family. And it wasn't long after we were married that we were like, oh, we want to bring another little guy into the picture. And it was right after my son was born that I started to notice a lot of behaviors that I just could not understand. There was a lot of need to control the environment and control our relationship, control the way that our children were raised. It seemed very overprotective in many ways. I also was noticing that anytime there was any sort of conflict in the relationship, there was severe withdrawal. And this was more than just needing to take a break after a fight. I'm talking about down in the basement, lock the door, doesn't come out, sometimes for days. There was also a lot of lashing out. So things that normal couples could deal with, it just seemed like simple things that wives would ask their husband, like, can you help with the dishes tonight, was taken as a personal affront to my husband's character. That I was telling him he was a bad father, that he was a bad husband, that he was a bad person, which would then resort in a lot of lashing out and blaming me. And this conflict was just something we tried everything, tried counseling, love languages, date nights, I am statements, all the things, and couldn't break through. And it was only when I decided that I'd had enough and I needed to take a break that my husband was able to reveal to the first time to anyone a terrible history of childhood abuse at the hands of the church.
Oh,
This was the piece of the puzzle that I just couldn't find of that would explain some of the things that I was experiencing. And I was At first, I felt lied to be honest. I felt, you know, that this was a big secret that should have been revealed um,
Yeah.
before
You
we
were
got
like,
married,
yeah,
or at least an explanation, right? As to some of the things I could see. But what I learned later is that this dissociation, for that from severe abuse is real. And there, it was just coming back to my husband what had happened to him as he was about to lose everything. So it's, as everything with complex trauma is very complex, including how it can be revealed.
absolutely. Absolutely. I want to spend our conversation not talking about your husband and his journey because the book is written Resilient Wives. And I want us to focus in on what it is like for you to have walked this journey with your husband, what your experiences were. When you first met and fell in love, and you said you met your dream man, what did it feel like when you were with him?
Oh, I felt like I was the center of his universe for the first time with anyone. He was so interested in everything about me. And for the first time, I felt like somebody really cared about my job, what I did day by day, wanted me to spend as much time with him as possible. We found activities that we both loved to do. And even the things that we may not love to do, we would do it anyway together. It was amazing. And then watching him father his daughter was the sweetest thing I've ever seen in my life. I absolutely loved it.
Wonderful. So there were no red flags. There was nothing that made you think, uh oh, I should check this out a little more.
Well, looking back, there were some things that I
Well,
now
that's
let other
fine.
people know.
Yeah,
At the time,
that's
no,
fine.
no. But looking back, I'm like, okay, there were some signs, for sure. He definitely did not talk about his childhood.
I was going to ask, can you share some of the signs? Because
Yeah.
the picture I want you to paint is what was it like pre-marriage, pre-disclosure, and what was it like after? Because
Yeah.
because we there was some turmoil that was going on that brought it to the surface, and we all know can envision what that would be like.
Hmm.
But your
So,
will drastically changed, right?
yeah. So in my husband's case, his family was it's Catholic, amazing. His parents were still together, had a younger brother. But it was so interesting because anytime I talked to him about it or asked him about questions about his childhood, he's like, I don't remember much about it. Or it was fine. It was very normal. There just was an absolute no discussion about, things that happened in the past, which looking back, I thought, I do think, it was definitely weird. The other signs would be, of course, the lack of trust. So that was a significant sign. And then this control. The control is real. And in every relationship, it looks a little bit different. But now that I know it, I felt like he was trying to control me and control my kids and control, obviously keeping them safe. But what I learned later is this is a need for them to feel safe. They control because it's the only time they feel safe. And again, it wasn't anything to do with me, but it sure felt like it. It really felt like it when I didn't know that, when we were in the midst of it. The withdrawal is another thing. So people either experience a lot of anger coming from their spouses from little things, and it's because of a perceived danger. Their little brains were wired to always be looking for danger even when it's not there. And so they are seeing things that the partners are asking as signs that they aren't good enough, right? The shame comes up very strongly. And so you either see it with anger or withdrawal, which is what I saw a lot. And I learned later that this withdrawal, again, is a safety mechanism. He actually was trying to protect me from the responses that he could feel bubbling up.
Wow.
So that's, it felt completely different to me, but being able to, get that piece of the puzzle and really delve deep into the reason that these were happening, then I started to be able to separate myself from those trauma responses. That is number one for spouses. I would say that the vast majority, and I want to say 90 to 95% of the fights that we had nothing to do with me or anything I did. They stemmed from trauma responses that had not been dealt with.
Uh, yes, but you can say that cognitively and logically now. But what were the small little fights? Were they big lies, or were they, judgments or accusations? How did it come out? How did it manifest?
Every single day, I felt like there was something, whether it wasn't, I used too much toilet paper. My showers were too long. The shades should be at these certain points. It could be you asking for anything, right? I can't believe that you would ask me to help with the dishes when you know what type of day I had. It was like walking on eggshells. It was like walking through a field of landmines, just waiting and not knowing when you would say something that would set it off.
Yeah. So that creates trauma in you.
Yes. Yes. And I was I still, even to this day, I'm like, oh, are we going, when you get one of those experiences that you're like, oh my gosh, are we going back to day one? When that was my life every single day. Is terrifying. And then there was definitely some events that are detailed in the book where every time the phone rang, I was expecting somebody to tell me, something devastating that my husband may have done that wasn't appropriate.
Wow. So even something as simple as a phone ringing could elicit that trauma response and put you right into fear and flight.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
How did you handle this? Because I envision that you're dealing with rejection, you're dealing with blame, you're dealing with feeling responsible to make sure that these situations, you said your husband was controlling, but I bet you were trying to control his responses so that you wouldn't have to deal with his outcomes, right?
Yes, very unsuccessfully. I was trying to control the responses. I also felt crazy. I felt like everything that I did, I started to question me as a good person, me as somebody who should even be in relationships, that I should not be a mother. I wasn't fit to be one. I felt crazy. And then the other part of my brain is going, I am a successful woman. I am a good spouse. So it was very, very confusing. Yeah.
Yeah. That I think is the greatest word for it, is the constant confusion. And one of the ways that I've tried to describe this to people is that you don't have a horizon, that the earth is always moving underneath you.
You're striving for safety and stability that just isn't there. It just feels like you're on a roller coaster.
And that's how you're living. That's your life.
It's your life every day.
How many years did you go through this?
9
Nine.
9 years.
And so, what did the people around you see? What did they experience? Do they have any idea of what your marriage was really like?
No. My family were probably the closest, but even they, after they read the book, were like, we didn't know, we didn't understand. So there was definitely a lot of, why are you staying? Which is a very good question. But, why are you staying? We want you to be happy. You also deserve to be happy, despite what happened to your husband and the hell that he went through. So it was rough, but I also felt the need. There's a lot of pressure on a spouse to keep things a secret, right? Because it's usually a very shameful secret for your husband. So you feel like you're stuck just trying to survive alone without the support that you need. And so for wives and partners that are out there that are going through this, I want to know that you can't do it alone. I tried my hardest and failed. And you can get to a place where you have a safe space that you and your husband both feel comfortable with. So I do want people to know that you don't need to feel this isolation. You can get the support that you need, that you will need.
So, how do you do that if your partner, your spouse, your husband isn't ready to publicly disclose the abuse that he's gone through? Because men were raised with big boys don't cry. And if you're not a man, then there's something wrong with you. And it comes out in all sorts of addictions and all sorts of coping mechanisms. It comes out in the inability to have an intimate conversation. But wouldn't you say that he was Mr. Charming with the whole rest of the world?
Oh my goodness. And we have a bunch of single ladies around our house. Oh, he is just the sweetest, most amazing man. Everybody, everybody thought so. So absolutely, there's a big front that they are able to portray to the public that deep down inside and in the depths of their lives is not there.
But then that saying about what happens behind closed doors stays behind closed doors. Once you leave that happy place of out in public where you're living with the man of your dreams and the door closes, how did you cope?
So I did it wrong initially, but I needed to do it. I could not isolate myself and not talk about what was going on. End of story. So if there are partners out there that are feeling the same way, this is what I recommend that you do. And that is to have a conversation with your spouse, with your partner, about how you can't do it alone, but you do not want to interrupt, and violate his need for privacy. So there has to be someone safe that you both agree to that you can share. And you don't have to share the intimate details. And you can say that, right? I don't need to share what happened to you. I just need to share what I'm going through being married to you. And so usually a counselor is an easier safe space. And there's usually one or two of your friends or family members that your husband's like, yeah, I think you could share with that one person, but please don't share with so and so because she'll tell everybody. So that's the conversation that I recommend that you have in order to get the support that you need and that you're on the same page.
How long before you had that conversation with your husband? How long were you trying to carry his secrets?
Oh, way too long. 3-4 years.
Wow. Wow. That is a heavy, heavy burden for
Mhm.
anybody to carry. When we come back, I want to go into some of the strategies that you talked about in your book. Your book is fantastic and I highly recommend it. So, there's some of the things that I want us to review on what we can do to cope with the traumas within ourselves, but living with someone else who's healing and dealing with their own traumas. when we come back from this commercial break.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. Rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies. Find settings that allow them to be the most productive and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
So for those people who are listening to your story and they're wondering, oh, is the chaos that I'm living with, is the confusion, the things that don't make sense, and they start to wonder, how would you recommend that they address and find out if there's a root cause? Because I want us to talk about the transition, but then I really want us to focus in on how to heal from this and how to get through these difficult emotions.
Yes, good, very great question. And I have a resource on my website for anybody who's wondering, what are these signs? Because that was the biggest piece for me that I wish somebody would have shared with me. Because even if I hadn't known still, if my husband hadn't revealed, if I was seeing these signs in my relationship, I would have wanted these tools no matter what, right? I think that in general, as you said, everybody has some trauma and they could have coped with them in these ways. And these tools will 100% work for you to get more peace in your relationship. So that would be my first step.
I love that, because you're right. It doesn't always have to be childhood abuse, but we have these traumas. And if we're not taught the coping skills to deal with it ourselves, how do we do that in a relationship where everything gets amplified, right?
You're going to have to really dig deep and identify that, these are some of the things that I have always done, right? I've always done it this way. But guess what? Sometimes what got us here isn't going to be what's going to get you there, which is a loving, intimate, close relationship with someone. You haven't gotten that far in your relationship, even to the point of marriage, for no reason. That's what you want. So let's dig deep and let's deal with those mechanisms and deal with them in a better way.
Awesome. So you have a step system and it's called Wife Care. Can we, CARE is an acronym, as I understand, just like CRAP is an acronym. CRAP, I call it Conditioned Responses Automatic Programming, which is probably what is the root of a lot of trauma as well. Could you start with what C is?
Absolutely. It is the comprehending childhood trauma. Everybody needs to educate themselves if they think that this is something that's going on. And without knowing the why that things are happening, it's really hard to get to the what you can do about it. So that is the number one step in my program, is getting deep. Really, I figuring out, okay, these are triggers that commonly occur in relationships. Which ones could be occurring in yours? And how does your spouse, what reactions do they have that would indicate that they've been triggered? That's the first step. You got to start figuring out what's going on in your relationship, what the underlying causes for those behaviors that I described before.
Awesome. I'm going to change the topic quickly because it just occurred to me that your husband was a child when this abuse happened. Is that comprehending childhood trauma valuable while you're raising children, to recognize when your children are dealing with something that they can't talk to you about, they don't have the words?
It does. It does. I think that it plays out a little differently in your children, but definitely some of those signs would be the same. So, when my husband was in the midst of abuse, the withdrawal was definitely there, the pushing people away, not letting, people close. But there's a few other things with kids, like kids of abuse often don't feel as much pain
Oh,
as other kids. So it was always a concern. I'm also a healthcare worker, that those kids that would come in to the ER with a severe injury who weren't expressing any pain. Those are some signs in kids, as well as just really risky. So you hear about the cutting, of course, as some things, but I think some trauma kids also are just extremely risky, right? They're willing to take risks because of the fact that they just have so much shame, and they're not really sure if they want to be in the world as it is, and so they take a lot more risks.
wow. I'm really glad that you shared that information, because anyone who's watching, one of the things I talk about in Unlearn the Crap is that it's built into our DNA. So whether we wanted to or not, if we have these traumas and these abuses that haven't healed, we're passing that down into the DNA of our children. And so it's really important that we learn how to heal it today, but then also how to recognize what we've inadvertently passed down, and recognize when our children are being affected by it.
If one person could have seen some of these things in my husband and just been like, I wonder if everything is okay, I think his whole story could be different.
Absolutely. And all those other children. Okay, so let's talk about A.
That is accessing the support that you need. So that is all what we just talked about how you can't do it alone. You cannot be their counselor. You cannot be their everything. It is impossible. And so you are going to need support. So I literally have a getting support checklist, and there's 4 different phases: support for you, support for your husband, support for the couple, other support, which is like, do you need a food service? Something when you're in survival mode that will give you some peace.
Absolutely. Okay, let's talk about R. What's R?
All right, resilience building through self-care. I mentioned previously that if you are exhausted, in survival mode, burned out, resentful, and angry, no matter what your good intentions is for trying these tools and setting boundaries, you're going to be more reactive. I also learned this the hard way. So I recommend to women who are going through this, and I'm not talking about spa days. That's not possible when you're in survival mode. Taking a week's vacation, never going to happen. So what can you do in 5 minutes a day that let 5 to 10 minutes that will restore you? And write those 5 things down And you need to make time for that 5 minutes every single day. That will keep you healthier, stronger, more resilient.
Absolutely. So you're suggesting create a toolbox that you can go and access at any times, knowing that when you are feeling this or you need that, that you've got those resources already pre-planned.
You got it. And guess what? I hate to tell you this, but if you're married to a childhood trauma survivor, there's going to be other triggers along the way. So, for example, we now have a teenage daughter who is getting her driver's license. There is nothing more terrifying to a trauma survivor who wants to control their environment and know where everyone is. Nothing is more triggering than having your daughter drive away into the sunset. And so I've had to go back to the toolbox that I have created way back then and start at the beginning. Okay, what are these new triggers I'm seeing? All right, where is my support group? Where is the self-care that I'm going to need to get through this? You're absolutely right.
Absolutely. Would you say that part of the support system is understanding the central nervous system and the vagus nerve and how we have the power to turn it off when it gets triggered on?
That is part of it. I do think that when you're in survival mode, I also have people let go of the why. It kind of doesn't matter.
Could you
And
explain?
so, yeah, let me explain that. So, I wanted to know why Thanksgiving and Christmas time were so horrible. No, I just, why? And I just had to let go. I don't know why. There must be triggers in my husband that he can't identify, and I'm not going to identify. I just need to know that I'm going to have to tap into my toolbox every holiday. And I just had to let go, needing to know why, because it was just the way it was. And it's similar with some of the triggers that you will see like being dismissed. Feeling dismissed can be a trigger. Why? You can go crazy wanting to know the why, when really you just need to tap into the toolbox and treat it like every other trigger. And I just think that sometimes you're not going to know.
Yeah, we've talked about that on many different episodes with many different topics, that the why is elusive and it's something we want, but it has no value.
Mm-mm. It's not worth just fighting, right, over the why, or keep bringing it up. But why is this happening? Why is this happening? And these poor guys, they're like, I don't know why. And, it just ends up not being very fruitful.
No, I could not agree more. Let's talk about E.
That is the establishing healthier patterns. So this is when you've set up all your little support and tools along the way, and then you can really start communicating differently now that you know all those things. And that is when we would start to script out the common scenarios that you're having and how you can start the conversation that you need to have, in a way that won't put your partner on the defensive, knowing their triggers now. So once you know the triggers, then you can phrase the conversation so that you're not coming in strong and making them feel on the defensive immediately within the conversation. So that's where we really get into those deep tools. And this is also the place where we start talking about setting boundaries. If you're going to be married to a trauma survivor, you're going to have to get pretty good at setting boundaries. And that's when, the lashing out occurs. You're saying, hey, I want you to understand that I want to talk about this, but right now is not the time. When you've calmed down, I'd love to have a follow-up conversation. So this is when the boundaries piece is going to be really important.
Absolutely. It sounds like building your own business or anything else. It's a whole self development program being married to a trauma survivor. And when we come back, we're going to talk about how we can have successful relationships and how you can help when we come back from this commercial break.
Did you know that Your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating. Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Well, I think this is a great place to remind everybody that these conversations we're having are so important. We need to unlearn the crap. We need to heal our past traumas, and we need to be able to step into the best amazing versions of ourselves. So support Unlearn the Crap. Make sure that you subscribe to this channel, comment, share, make this conversation available, because you don't know who's looking for this information, who hasn't spoken up. And so your ability, even if you aren't affected by this, you sharing this makes it available to someone who's looking and needs help. Danielle, we were just talking on the break on how amazing you are. Look at how beautiful, calm, smiling you are. You've come to the other side, haven't you?
I have. Yeah. And I do get that question a lot where, are you really happy? Are you really happy in your relationship now? And the answer is yes. Yes. In fact, I wouldn't have had it any other way. My husband, after what he went through, he deserves it. And if we can help other people with our story, I think that's why we were put in this situation.
I love that. How much more validating could it be to say that you would walk this walk again because this man is worth it? I'm tearing up even hearing you say that. Thank you. So you are the author of Resilient Wives, but you're doing a lot more than that. You and I are speakers on the Women Thrive Summit coming up in March, and that's how we met. But tell us, how else do you take this story, this tragedy, this trauma, and turn it into resilient, powerful, intimate love and purpose of your life?
Yeah, I am on a mission, 100%, to stop the silence around trauma. And especially, I have this particular passion, of course, because of my situation, for men that are suffering with all of that shame, and they're holding these secrets. I'm not sure if I mentioned, but the age that men reveal on average, especially sexual abuse, is 52 years of age. It breaks my heart. And I think that needs to stop. And if there's anything that we can do, and me as a couple, me as a person, me as a spouse to even a couple of people just realizing that holding that secret is nothing that you need to hold, that there are people out there that can handle the truth and can help you heal. You don't need to do it by yourself. So I'm on a mission for that. And that's why I'm getting out, speaking, telling my story. But I also am creating that resource that I never had, that I couldn't find, so that partners of this have some help, have some community, and real tools that really work.
How do you do that? How do you support partners who want to be there, but they're lost?
Yeah. I have a program. It's a 12-week program where I literally take you through those steps that we just talked about. So 12 weeks, I work with you individually. We script things out. We talk about the situations that are occurring in your particular relationship. We get really good at identifying those triggers and creating that toolbox for you to survive any triggers that you're going to encounter along your relationship. So the 12-week program, I also have a community of wives that I'm just starting, of all of us who are in similar situations. And then I'm starting a group coaching as well.
Wow. So you are really walking the walk. And because we say that our mess becomes our story. And it sounds to me that what you've gone through has really created an amazing new life that you probably couldn't have seen in advance, could you?
Oh, no. This was not in my, no, not at all. But man, I wouldn't have it any other way, as I said. I do feel very fulfilled with this, and I feel it's so needed, and I just won't stop. I won't stop for the rest of my life.
I love it. So we've been talking about wives. I want to switch gears while we're wrapping up. And I want to talk about men and the strength that they have to go through to suppress and go through this. What message would you say to men that they don't need to carry the shame?
Your partner, your family, I said it before, but we can handle the truth. You keeping it a secret is actually doing the opposite for your relationships than you think it is. You will need to get this secret out in a safe place in order for it to not have its power over you anymore. So if this is you and you're hearing this and you're wondering if it's time, it's time. Let's do it today.
I love that. And as a woman and a wife, I want to speak to the men as well, and I'd like you to as well, to say that we honor who they are and we love them, not in spite of that, but because it's part of who they are and how they got shaped. Would you not agree?
Absolutely. My husband is a fireman, so I think that a lot of people who have had traumatic pasts they look for jobs, even that they feel that they can give back. My husband's the best fireman, and he also has moved up, and he's now kind of in fire prevention, and the work that he does with kids, he gets them. It's an amazing gift that he has to connect with these kids that usually are going through hard times, because he's been there. So these gifts and the what you learned and how you can connect with other people and be there for them is so amazing. And it's because, unfortunately, of what happened to you, but it's some of those things that can make a real difference in others.
Absolutely. Thank you, Danielle, for your honesty. I respect and honor your husband for allowing you to share his story so openly. That is a massive gift of courage. So thank you very much.
Yeah, he is a true hero with the work that he has done to be able to allow this and us to get our story out.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for listening and participating again. I encourage you to like, subscribe, comment, share this. This is so important that we end the shame and end the blame and bring the truth to the light, because we can handle it individually. As women, as men, we can handle it. There is nothing that we can't do together. And the world is waiting for all of us to shed our past, our traumas, and step into the glory of the greatness of who we each all are. Thank you, Danielle, for being here. And thank you for being a part of this show. I honor
Thank
you
you
as
so
well.
much.
Until next week.
This has been Unlearn the Crap TV with your host, Kathy Baldwin. Tune in each week as Kathy challenges you to rethink everything you know about personal empowerment and societal structures. Thursdays, 4 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.